Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Wilbert the Blogger's coming at you live through the love of the internet. Now, today I have something quite personal to talk about, something I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while, and to be completely honest, I've ifed and hawed about making this video, but it is something pretty important. Now, for those of you who have been following my channel for a while, you'll notice that I've made quite a few videos about autism and given you my consolidated advice. So today I'm here to talk about autism and abuse within the home, discrimination, things on that matter. I mean, a lot of you seem to like my video about how to get a job if you're disabled. So, I mean, this is kind of similar to that, but it's more on the abuse side of the home towards people with autism. Now, the first time I experienced abuse within the home, specifically because of my autism, was when I was about 5 years old, when my father said to my mother, "You must have had an affair to give birth to William Key, which is why, because he isn't intelligent like us and he's got autism and he looks nothing like me." And then, of course, when I was older, which started at the back end of 2009, I started to get mentally abused by my older brother Tom. He was asking for money all the time because he wanted to go out with his friends drinking and doing drugs. So, that went on for about 5 years. And the worst thing about abuse within the home with autism is that nobody listens to you, because you're the autistic kid. You're the one with the reputation for being naughty or stealing or not being able to get a job, not being able to keep a relationship, and all these problems. You might have had bad reports at school or college. You might have done a few silly things and gotten yourself into trouble with the law. I mean, by March 2014, I'd been interviewed by police about 7 times. Nothing dodgy, just silly things like going to my ex-girlfriend's house to get my coat back, and doing a video on YouTube about why we split up, and buying CS gas thinking it was deodorant, like silly things. But the worst part about the abuse for me with my older brother was the fact that I lived with him, and by July 2013, I couldn't really get away from him because I lived there. It was happening all the time. He was constantly coming up to me and he'd say, "You're going to live here until you're in your 50s, you're always in the way, you don't do the dishes, you use all the gas and electric." He said, "You're that much of a retard that you can't even get a job down the road." He said, "You can't even get a job at Tesco, you can't even do a paper round." He was constantly in my fucking face, telling me how much of a piece of shit I was. Not that he was any better. I mean, the irony is that he didn't move out till he was 29 years old. The irony is that I've always been more successful than him. I've always been better academically, always been in and out of relationships. Not to say that moi as a man's like le homme pute in French. But yeah, I've always done better than him. My older brother's been jealous of me since 2009, which was when the abuse started, which was when I became the managing director, le gérant of Walton Hall, of the school council. I did that until I left in July 2011. So one night, my mum told me to go upstairs and help Tom wrap a few Christmas things because it was in December. I sat next to him and he said, "What the fuck, Will? You've sat on all my decorations." And I didn't know I was sitting on them because I had big hips. Well, they're even bigger now. I'm 5'7", 19 stone, pretty big guy. I mean, I was like 16 stone then, so still pretty big. And he said, "What the fuck, you sat on all my decorations?" He was being shitty about that. And he said, "I don't know why you're gassing to everybody about you being managing director." He said, "You've only got this role because everyone else is a retard and you're the only one with half a brain to do it." He just completely dismissed my achievements like it was nothing. So I helped him wrap a few things and I was just like, fuck you. I don't like your attitude, don't like you being like that. I went back to my bedroom, and that started a massive chain of events where, going into 2010, every time I was in the boys' room to see him and to see Jake, my stepbrother, my younger brother Richard, you know, he was constantly in my face about everything I did in life. He said that I walked like a penguin. He said I dressed like a homeless person. He said that I was shit at socialising with women on Facebook and women in real life. And of course, at this point, I didn't know I was bisexual. And to be honest, that's the last thing I wanted to come out about, because Tom, being the insecure piece of shit that he is and a bully, he would have said, "Oh, you don't know what sexuality is, and it's just another Asperger's obsession, and you know, it's all in your head because you've got autism." You know, I mean, he's an absolute piece of shit in every way. Never really deserved me as a brother, never deserved the Christmas presents and all the times I tried to help him. I mean, the only time he was actually nice to me was during 2008, was when I was being messed about by a girl at Stafford College, and he actually gave me some good advice. But I think in 2008 he was kind, because he moved out in 2007 and he had a good job at JCB. He was making lots of money, so he saw me as his lesser, and I was his lesser. He was making good money, he was going on holiday, he was doing well for himself. So because he saw me as his lesser, he left me alone. But then at the end of 2008, he was made redundant because of the credit crunch and American politics. And then instead of getting another job, he spent £4,000 that JCB gave him on alcohol, drugs, and all that. He moved back in with mum's house and he took the piss with the food and the alcohol, and he took up all the room downstairs with his Xbox and everything. And he didn't move out until 2016. He didn't move out until my mum and dad got married when they were both 54. And they said, right, you need to fuck off. You need to get your own life. You need to stop taking the piss. And if they didn't make him move out morally, he would have been there forever. So I don't know where he got the fucking right to come in my face when I was 21 and say, you'll never move out, you'll never get married, and you're going to be here doing fuck all for the rest of your life. And a lot of the time I just laughed at him as if to say, are you sure you're not talking about yourself? Because that's exactly what you're doing. And I think it's also worth mentioning in that through the height of this abuse from July 2014 to March 20, well, sorry, July 2013 to March 2014, that was the worst part of the abuse, because, you know, me and my girlfriend split up in June 2013, so I wasn't staying at hers 4 nights a week. My college course ended. So, you know, I was on the phone to about 14 people during the week trying to get somewhere to stay at the weekend, usually friends' houses, just to get a break from him for 2 or 3 days. And, you know, I tried to tell my mum and stepfather about this on many occasions, and my mum said, well, you know, it's just banter, it's just his way of trying to help you. Paul kept saying, oh, your brother loves you, and if there was 20 black people beating the shit out of you, he'd run outside and drag them all off. I don't know what black men has to do with it, it's just kind of his sense of humour. But that's the worst thing about being abused in the home when you're autistic. Nobody listens to you, as I said earlier, because you're the autistic person. So my way of dealing with that was to move out. In March of 2014, I packed my bags, went to the YMCA, and a year and a half later I got my own flat. I made a few friends. I got a Budapest trip out to the YMCA. I became pretty popular. I helped Kirsty Bertarelli perform a hit single with a few other people, Ghost of Christmas Past. Um, I managed to meet Nick Mason, the drummer of Pink Floyd in the 80s, because how can you eat any pudding if you don't eat your meat? And all that stuff. And then, you know, around 2015, you know, I went to my mum's barbecues, and I tried to tell Mum and Paul a few other times, but they just said, well, why didn't you bring this up at the time? Why did you tell us? They probably just thought I was drunk, to be fair. And then in September 2015, I went to the Master Potters in Cheadle with my mum, Nana Viv, and I remember my mum saying, you know, there was always conflict between Will and Tom, and Will thinks that Tom's bullying, he thinks he's trying to make him feel small. And I was just like, for fuck's sake, it's pointless me talking because nobody's listening. So for a long time, I didn't really say anything. And then in December 2019, I went to the Greyhound with my mother. My partner Al was there, and my mum asked me if my older brother had spoke to me recently. I said, he hasn't messaged me in 4 years, not since June of 2015, and he only messaged me then because he wanted money for alcohol. So my mum got real upset, started crying, and she said, I told that prick to look after you when you moved to the YMCA. My mum said, I told your brother, you look after your Bill. You, which is me also, everyone called William was called Billy, going back to Billy the Kid and 1065 and the Highwayman and a whole other story about that. But yeah, my mum was like, yeah, you need to look after Will. And he didn't. I'm proud to say my sister always has. She's always told everyone, Will's intelligent, Will's good at singing, Will's good at history, Will's good at this, and I think that now the only real thing left to say on the subjects of abuse is that, if you've got a younger brother with autism or a younger sister or whoever, you help them out. You be there for them, and if they're having problems with relationships or employment or whatever it might be, you help them out. You make sure you're there for them, because you're a fucking prick if you don't. And if you don't, then you don't deserve them, especially if you're the person bullying them and making them feel like shit, and you're trying to brainwash, their mum and dad into thinking they'll never amount to anything and thinking that they need supervision for everything. If you're actively trying to ruin their life, like my older brother always did to me because he was jealous of me, then you're a piece of shit and you should probably delete your Minecraft account. Just saying. Or, if you can't say or do anything nice for your autistic brother or sister or whoever, shut the fuck up and just stay out the fucking way. If you're not able to say anything nice or do anything nice, just shut the fuck up. So then years later, in 2022, this conversation came up again when, my stepfather, Paul, I've always called him my father, but to save confusion from Richard, I just say stepfather because, it saves confusion. We had the conversation again and he said, were you bullied out? I said, yeah, I was bullied out and I tried to tell you, but nobody would listen. His words carried all the weight. And then in 2023, sadly, the family lost my mum to cancer. And then in 2025, this year, we celebrated my mum's wake in July of 2025. We scattered the ashes. My older brother Tom, unfortunately, he came on this trip. He was a piece of shit to me and my boyfriend. We've been together nearly 10 years. He was making homophobic comments towards us and he was getting in my face about my weight, like he did in 2013, where every time I got fired in the past, he'd get in my face and say, you got sacked because you're autistic and you're slow and you're so fat, and he couldn't wait to be a piece of shit about it just to make himself feel better. But anyway, he was doing all this shit in Wales, and at one point he said to Albert, if Will hasn't lost weight by the next time I see Will, I'm going to pull your glasses off your face and break them. I said, it's your fucking funeral, Tom. I said, you don't want to fucking mess with Al. And I said, you don't want to mess with me either. I said, since you've defatted yourself to 17 stone, which he's so obsessed with, by the way. He thinks he's an icon just because he used to be 25 stone. And he's gone down to 17 stone, which is still pretty big. He's still fat, it's not like he's 11 stone and a personal trainer. He thinks he's God's gift to the fucking world. And I just said, I could probably take you. I said, I'm 19 stone and I know how to fight just as much as you do. I know all the same moves as you do. So I said, you better fuck off. You better pray to God that one day I forgive you. And I thought about it. I mean, morally, I was done with Tom after that. And then a month later, he beat up my stepfather, a defenceless 60-year-old man with learning difficulties, mental health problems, all because my stepfather walked down the stairs and he said to Tom, stop throwing the sausages for Bal, who was our border collie dog, because of her back legs. And he said, oh, fuck off. He said, you've nicked me last fag, which is a cigarette English slang. He waited for Paul to look to the side. He hit him in the face. He was stamping on his head. And because of that, it's going to take 2 years for his jaw to fix, where he's going to be on a soft diet for 2 years. So everybody in the family basically wants nothing to do with Tom. So then I told everybody that the reason I moved to the YMCA was because he bullied me out. And I'm very happy to say that now the whole family is listening to me. Everybody believes me now. Everybody, you know, everybody realises the kind of insecure piece of shit that he was, and they've seen him for what he really is. And recently, my stepbrother Jake and his wife Natalie said to Paul, "Why did Will move to the YMCA all those years ago?" And he said, "Because Tom bullied him out. He was the reason he was so desperate to move out." And according to my stepfather, Tom went around gassing and telling lies to everyone, saying that it was Paul that made me move out. No, no, and honestly, I'm normally the nice kind of guy who will give my unsolidated advice to anybody of any race. You've only got to watch the Ghana video on my YouTube channel to see what kind of selfless person I am. But honestly, I couldn't give a toss if I never saw my brother again. Even if he was homeless, I'd just walk the other way around and pretend he didn't exist. Even if he was shot in the head tomorrow in Minecraft, I honestly wouldn't give a shit. So, as nasty as that sounds, you've got to wonder how much of a dick he was towards me. For somebody as kind as I am, to have that sort of mentality about someone I'm related to, you gotta wonder. I mean, when he goes to hell, the devil's gonna roll out the white. They'll roll the red carpet out for him. They really will. I mean, if he had spent the last 16 years focusing on himself and on his goals instead of trying to destroy my happiness and following me around like a fucking weirdo, he'd be on tally doing something. He'd be in America. So anybody who's, if you're 17, 18 and you're going through what I did, well, I'd advise you to just basically put that person in the place, tell them what a piece of shit they are, tell your parents. Hopefully they'll listen. Hopefully they'll see what's going on in the moment instead of years and years later. And if the abuse is getting to the point where, you're depressed and you're thinking of ending your life, or you're thinking of assaulting that person and knocking their teeth out, which I often thought about doing, but of course if I did, everybody would believe him and I would have been kicked out anyway. So, if it is getting too much, move the YMCA. It's actually not bad, considering the bad reputation and the bad rap that they get. I actually had a pretty good time during the 6 years I was there, until of course I met Albert and I moved out. And I'm in Mere, I went from being a poor city boy to quite a wealthy country boy. Everything got better after I met Al. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about my abuse story. So yeah, just kick life's ass. Don't let anybody put you into the pit that my older brother tried to put me into. In fact, don't let anybody do that for that matter. We'll speak again soon.